to be a business owner and you want to deliver these sorts of schemes, you need to know your stuff and you need to get a track record. I'd done this flip where I basically turned a 1-bed flat into a 2-bed flat and I generated my salary in 6 months. Hang on a minute, I'm doing this all wrong. This is obviously where the money is. Look, I just need to combine property and architecture. You know, I can be better than my competitors at delivering good schemes on a small to medium scale. Some of the deals were eye-watering. Bank conversions that we bought for 1.4 million cash, financing at 5.4. It was a brilliant deal. As I've learned through development, is you've got a good enough deal, you'll find the investment. And you need to have the deal first. The large reason why I've had some success is because of, I don't think I would have been able to do what I'm doing now without doing that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Property People. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Mr. Marc Turnier. How are you today, Marc?
I'm very well. How are you, Sam?
Very good indeed. I am a big fan of Marc and Arcvelop and everything that you've been doing recently. And I've been following you for a few years. And I'm very excited for you to share some of the stuff that you're working on. Let me go through a quick little intro for you. You're the founder and managing director of Arcvelop, an award-winning architecture-led firm offering a unique service of design and development for investment projects. You also have, with your architecture background, Arcvelop, which is the development company, and you've been primarily concentrating on commercial to residential conversions, schemes ranging from £500,000 to, and focusing on stuff like kind of £30 million in gross development value. Now an award-winning developer, which was great. I was there when you won your award last year. And we had one of your partners, Andy, on recently. It's great for you to sit down with us, run through how you've achieved so much in your career so far. And before we get into all of that, let's start with who were you at school? Did you always know that you would be a property developer working on multi-million-pound schemes?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sam. Yeah, I think that's going way back, isn't it? But I think actually, quite unusually, I was always obsessed with architecture. From a very young age, even before school, I quite often, when your parents and family members ask you, what do you want to be when you're older? It was, I want to be an architect. I want to design buildings. I want to build them. So, very strange thing. I've always had a sort of a strange obsession with them. I think I used to get it wrong, and I used to say to people, I want to be an archaeologist. Like, no, you want to be an architect. You want to design buildings, you know. So I think going through school, I think it's fair to say, I didn't find my passion at school. I think I was the type of kid that I was okay at all the subjects. I could do it if I applied myself, but then I think I needed something to focus on, and I think I needed to find what I was really good at. So I did things like, graphic design, art, and all of that, and it was good. I liked those teachers, but I was also very good at sports. I was actually a national level swimmer at the age of 13, 14. I think the whole way through, I needed something to focus on, and I think even at that age, I knew that swimming wasn't my passion, even though I was very good. I was the fastest in Yorkshire, I was the fastest in North East, and I went to the Nationals and came sort of third or fourth, and I knew there was someone better. I knew there wasn't any money in swimming, so I decided at 14 to quit that and focus on sort of, well, what seriously do I actually want to do? And during school as well, I had quite a life-changing moment. My mum passed away at 17, and she was a single parent, and so I had to go through my A-levels, and it was a tough time. But having got through that, and through, a lot of, it was hard work at the time, but I think a bit of luck as well, getting into architecture at Newcastle, that was when I think I was very fortunate, it all clicked at the right time. And I think it gave me a course for 7 years that I could actually grasp and get my teeth into. And I was always very good at doing projects. I was very good at taking buildings and repurposing them. And I loved, even back then, I loved things like in architecture school, things like conversion projects and working with listed buildings. So I think my progression has been quite organic, but I think that whole process from school was a really learning curve for me. But I think actually my real learning started at university, for sure.
In Newcastle. I mean, I'm from Durham, so I know I support Newcastle United, so I love, absolutely. But some adversity as well through losing your mum.
Yeah.
That's never an easy thing to go through as a young person. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
But you were able to still complete your A levels and
Just.
focus on that. Just about get through. Just about get through.
Yeah,
that,
yeah. But it was also, I mean, that's how I got into property as well. So, I mean, from a small amount of sort of life insurance, I was given that I basically had to learn quite quickly at 17, 18 what to do with this money, and it wasn't the time to be buying a car, or, a fast car or anything like that. But and I didn't have a lot of advice at the time, so I bought a property, and then me and my sister, we bought another property, and it was a buy to let, and we kept those, rented them out whilst I was at university, and then refinanced them, and that's kind of what kick-started flipping small flats and investing in blocks of flats eventually. So it's strange how all these things start to happen, and things happen for a reason, and and you just have to make the best out of some situations,
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned you kind of at school at art and stuff as well. So you've always been quite good at kind of using your imagination and kind of hand and with drawing and stuff.
Yeah, creativity has always been, very good at, creating spaces, creating drawings, sketching. All those sorts of things, they came quite natural to me. But I would say that starting university, I wasn't. I wouldn't say I was the best student to start with. I think after the A levels and getting there, I actually, going to university is quite a step anyway, a different change in your life. And I think I probably started off one of the worst students, I reckon, in the year. But gradually over, in terms of some people had a lot more experience. They'd done foundation courses. I was just going in fresh from A levels, and but I think by the end of the 7 years, it was 5 years at uni. I was almost the top of the year. I was nominated for the RIBA President Medal Awards, which is basically a design award across the country. But it took a lot of hard work and learning on the job at university, because you're against you're in 100. There's 100 people in the course, and they sort of rank you against each other, and it's very competitive. Yeah. So it was an environment where I needed to really focus. I really needed to learn my craft, and I think it taught me a lot. Actually, it taught me how to present to. You'd have a critique of people. You'd have 12 tutors and all your class looking at you, presenting in front of people, explaining why you think this is the best solution, why it's not. People asking you questions. I think all that stuff is brilliant stuff for the world of architecture and development. It goes
planning and stuff. Yeah, being challenged on your ideas and why, and then how feasible it is, I guess.
That's it.
And then are they asking stuff like cost of construction? Is that kind of incorporated, or is it more the design and kind of massing and stuff?
It comes into the end of the degree a bit more. So the first sort of stage is all quite conceptual. Then it becomes a bit more sort of structure based, and how would you actually build this? But there is, with architecture, there is a route in some schools where it can be conceptual the whole way through, and I think that's a bit of a criticism to architecture, because people can come out of architecture school and basically not know how to build, not how to cost something, not know how to do a simple extension on the back of a house, And actually, I think you learn that stuff by doing it once you've actually left university and you start. So it's a great course. It teaches you a hell of a lot. Really good skills, but it's more the foundation. And I think I was able to adapt to which tutor I had. If I had a tutor that was quite conceptual, I could adapt and do a scheme like that. If I had a tutor that was more, they loved regeneration, I'd do more a scheme, So I think that also helped me a lot with my professional career after that. And when I finished university, I got a position at Foster & Partners. So I worked for a couple of big companies in London, very corporate companies. So Allies and Morrison, working on the London 2012 Olympics. And then I also worked at Foster & Partners for about 2 years, and I was doing huge landmark schemes. I had the BBC headquarters in Cardiff I designed, and then we built that out. Nice. I worked on a tower in Dubai, so it's now just been finished. It's the new Dorchester building in Dubai, so high-end private resi and hotels. So there was a lot of great experience, but I was very much a small cog of a big machine. Norman's Foster Norman Foster's office is about 1,000, well over 1,000 people in the office, and I was on a team of maybe 5 or 6 people, and it didn't serve my entrepreneurial sort of spirit and what I wanted, and I knew that I could get what I needed from it. I could learn how to do sort of 400-page tender packs, and I'd be working until the 4 a.m. in the morning, and it'd be tough work. But I think at that period, I was also starting to flip individual flats in Kent and the southeast.
It's a bit of a side hustle.
A little side hustle. So, and I think there was a few projects that I did, and project managing, and and getting builders, and just doing very simple developments. I wouldn't even call it developments, more like refurbs, really. But I think my salary at the time was sub 30,000 a year, and I was working hard, and I'd done this flip where I basically turned a 1-bed flat into a 2-bed flat, and I generated my salary in about 6 months. So from start to finish. And I looked at it, and I think I was reading the 4-Hour Work Week at Tim Ferriss's book.
Yeah.
And I think the combination of those two things were like, hang on a minute, I'm doing this all wrong here. Like, this isn't right. Like, this is obviously where the money is, and this is where it's going to be a hard graft. And I could see my transition from 25, 24 years old to 60, and where I'd be, and I looked at the monetary side. I looked at my ambitions, and I thought that's just not the smart way of doing this. That's not the best return on my time. So it's when the idea started to form that, look, I just need to combine property and architecture. I'm good at the design side. I know how to get things through planning. I know, I can do all of that. I can give a high-end finish. And if I can combine that with property, and I can be better than my competitors at delivering good schemes on a small to medium scale, I knew that was the route at that point. So I then left Foster & Partners, and I started working. I said, I love residential architecture. I love commercial property. I want to look at this more detail. I had ambitions of maybe going to Dubai and maybe being a design manager over there and making money over there, but it just wasn't the right. If you want to be a business owner and you want to deliver these sorts of schemes, you need to know your stuff, and you need to get a track record going. And at that point, I didn't have a track record. I was young, so I started to apply for design director roles in private equity companies, small developers in central London. I started working at a company in Finsbury Park where we were just churning out sort of commercial to resi, small blocks of flats.
So moving from like an architecture practice to actually being a developer.
Yeah, exactly. And I just went head in, and
that's brilliant.
Yeah, I at that age I knew that track record was everything, and I picked up so much, even for a 7-month period with that company. I actually left because they were doing things that I didn't agree with, to listed buildings and all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So I didn't end on the best of terms because I was fresh out of architecture school, and I said I don't want to lose my architecture degree, my architecture qualification, now. So I had to leave, and then I found a company, a private sort of a family office, and it was basically a guy and his wife, and I was there in the office as the right-hand man. And I was in Kensington, just sort of delivering anything from bank conversions into 9 units, office to resi stuff in Hemel Hempstead, stuff in the southeast, all across. But the key criteria was, we're going to buy this. You're going to know the finances. You're going to get the planning. You're going to find the builders. You're going to develop it, and then we're going to refinance or we're going to sell them off. And that experience, I actually worked for a couple of guys, but that experience was invaluable. And I think that was where the idea really, really born. It was born to create Arcvelop, because I had this really high-end sort of experience from Foster & Partners, and now I was developing commercial to resi schemes around London, and some of the deals were eye-watering, and sort of bank conversions that we bought for 1.4 million cash, and then we were refinancing at 5.4, and we'd spent up 1.2 on it.
Wow.
And it was all that experience of buying cash, then getting the planning uplift, then refinancing it to get the build cost, and then building it out. That whole process over sort of 12 to 18 months, and I was doing everything from start to finish.
And because you were doing like the feasibility studies, drawing all the existing drawings, all the proposed drawings, putting it through the planning, wrestling with the planners, and then you get the planning uplift, and then you go out and do the tendering process, get the contractors, and they would do
Yeah, and that was multiple projects at the same time. That wasn't just one project. I was handling multiple. So that was great because I was young, and he gave me that opportunity to just go for it. He trusted in me, and I did. I was green. I didn't have the experience, and I remember the interview. He was asking me questions, and I was blagging little bits here and there, And he didn't care about the fostering partner stuff. He cared about the stuff that I'd done on the side. He cared about the smaller developments. So I worked for him, and we, in the end, I actually asked him about starting an architecture company and starting a development company, and he wanted to keep me as an employee, and he was sort of negotiating my bonus at the end of the year and those sorts of things. And I thought, mate, I know how much money we've made a lot of money. Right? You've made a lot of money. So and then it was at that point that I knew I needed to start to whittle down my days to start Arcvelop. So I actually started contracting for another developer in Walthamstow. Okay. And I was like their in-house development director, but it was only 4 days a week, and I was on a contractor basis, paid every day. So it meant that I could start as soon as Arcvelop started to pick up the client work, our own developments. I could just basically bring down those days every time.
Fascinating story. So when you're starting Arcvelop, how are you going around finding deals? Because that's kind of, you obviously know how to add value to something and look at something. Are you farming auction catalogs? Are you looking at commercial agents? Are you going direct to vendor? You've probably got a good idea of how these other developers that you've just been working with, how they're doing it, how were they doing it, and how did you end up looking for your deals? Yeah,
I'd say the vast majority of deals that the guys I was working for at the time, it was all agent based. It was all agent based. They had black books of agents, across all central London, and they spent a lot of time nurturing those relationships, and that sort of, they got me involved, and they got me involved investors as well, finding money as well. But the agent side was critical to ours. So we needed to deliver on the schemes. First of all, you need to buy stuff. Then you need to actually do what you say you're going to do. And then you need to give stuff back to the agents that you're buying from as well. And that's really, I'd say, majority of our deals come from local agents. And we don't develop currently. We do stuff just outside of London, but not central London, and that's for various reasons. But one of the reasons is competition. I'm not oblivious to the fact that me at the moment with Arcvelop, we are of a certain size, but I know the caliber of developers and investors that I was working for, and the amounts of backing that they've got behind them. They're able to act very, very quickly on deals. They have pools of cash that they're able to lean on. They have amounts of money that they're given by the bank because of the size of their portfolio just to invest, every year.
Yeah, like a vulture fund, basically. Yeah,
exactly. So I knew competition was a big thing. So that's why I focused a lot of our attention actually outside of London, and that's where I'm the bigger fish in the smaller ponds, because people know, we've got this deal, this 18,000 square foot deal, in Kent. Mark's just bought one of those last year. I'm the guy that they might turn and look to go and do that, and they know they'll get something at the end of it if we're going to sell them or rent them. So agents are huge. We didn't do a lot of direct to vendor and all of that sort of stuff. There were smaller campaigns, but the agents was the big factor. They also did have people working in-house for them, just finding deals, on the ground. Again, meeting agents, going out. So I've taken that forward into Arcvelop. The exact same principles. Everything that I've learned from all these companies, even the big ones, I've taken it all in, like a sponge, just sort of utilizing everything that I've learned inside Arcvelop.
And to give us an idea of where these schemes are, because I know that they're not all concentrated in one particular location.
No.
You just mentioned after this you've got to go head up north for one of the sites. Sunny Sheffield. So give us an idea of which parts of the country you're working on sites at this very moment in time. This episode of Property People was brought to you by Merry Oaks Property Finance. Merry Oaks Property Finance is my company. I'm the managing director and founder. We launched August of last year. We provide finance for SME property investors and developers across the UK. Everything from bridging to development finance to whatever your exit might look like. If you're going to hang on to the properties, from commercial term loans, buy-to-let, holiday lets, service accommodation, etc. We are investors, developers, landlords in the background. We have been lenders. We have been estate agents. So we very much know the value chain. We very much know what you go through, the highs and the lows, and we want to share them with you. So if you are looking to make an investment, if you are looking to refinance something, if you are looking for funding for any of your property investments, please do reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
So we're currently doing deals anywhere from Orpington to Kent across the southeast. I know that's quite a big area, but we really, if the model works from commercial to resi in those sort of the numbers are sort of similar across those areas. So we've got sort of a deal in East Kent that's an 18,000 square foot conversion, and it's got a 12,000 square foot new build. So it's a total of just under 40 units at the moment. We've got we've just sold through planning gain a sort of a dentist practice / healthy living centre, and we got planning to convert that to 9 units with a commercial unit, and we've sold that on with planning, and that's in Orpington. We've got a project in Norwich at the moment, which is it's completely built out of timber frame, prefabricated timber frame. Again, an old motorcycle workshop that's been converted into commercial and 9 residential units. And then we've got an old sawmill in Sheffield, which I'm going to see soon. We're looking at getting builders on board now. We're turning that into 20 units, just under 20 units. And it's an old sawmill that we're going to convert, and then it's got a new build car park to the side of it as well.
So you got the planning permission on the one in Sheffield, or you get the
not yet. We're in planning at the moment. Yeah, so we're currently going into planning. So we've done a lot of the pre-app process. We've gone to historic England because it's right. It abuts a Grade 2 star listed building.
Right.
So there's a lot of thought process going on around that sort of stuff. But yeah, so we're building out probably a pipeline of around about 70, just over 70 units at the moment.
And I mean, just going, if you don't mind, like a little bit of the numbers. Like, so Orpington,
sure.
you said that you've just sold in with just a planning uplift, and what did you secure it at? How much time and money have you spent on getting it to where it needs to? And what did you sell it for?
Yeah. So very easy numbers. We secured an option agreement at 750,000. It was a direct to vendor process. It was going through that. We wrote letters to the guy. This was my business partner, David Guest, and he found the deal. He agreed the option agreement. We then got planning for 9 units. That took us, the planning actually was quite fast. I mean, it probably took us about 6 months in planning.
Planning is very fast.
Very quick. But the actual option agreement probably took about a year to negotiate.
Right.
And then the sale of the option, we actually did a sort of back-to-back with another builder that we know, and we sold it for 1.1 million. So we didn't put the only money that we put in was for the planning costs and our actual time, but we never actually purchased the building. We just sold the option agreement on. So it was a great deal.
And then and with those funds, are you typically blowing it on fancy cars and holidays, or are you just rolling it back into the next deal?
No, that's been a big part of it's always about putting it back in. I mean, we're actually, I'm buying a flat in Spain at the moment, so we are using a bit of the funds for that, but that's very unusual, and I think that's only become after doing 4 or 5 years of this, but actually, the main focus is to re-input the funds, go again, recycle funds, keep going, because we use a lot of private investor funds, and I think as we grow and we get bigger and bigger, I think we will just like to replace some of that with our own funds as we get larger, our own equity. But for the moment, it's just about recycling, about growing, and just finding the next deal.
And the 40 unit scheme, I mean, that sounds like a very, very good sized deal.
Yeah.
Was that found through an agent? Was that found, because you said you went direct to vendor on one, although you prefer the kind of agent route, and I've literally sat with so many different developers over the years, and some of them, yes, they're in the black book and they get some great calls. Some of them just rely on direct to vendor, and it sounds like you do a little bit of both. How did the 40 unit scheme come about?
This one was through Savills actually, and it was on the market. I got a relationship with Savills from previous stuff I'd done in London, but I went to view this the first time and I missed out on it. So the guy that viewed it the week before me got it under offer, literally that week. So I couldn't make an offer. I knew it was a fantastic scheme. I walked in straight away. It had existing planning in principle to knock down the whole building, and it was ideal for conversion. I mean, I looked around and I was like, "There's no way we're knocking this down. It's between a listed building over there, a listed building over there. There's no way. This doesn't stack if you're going to knock this down." So I told the vendor at the time. I said, "Look, this is what you got to do. I mean, this is what we're going to do, and this is how the deal's going to work." And the guy that had it under offer, I kept on harassing the agent saying, "Look, if this ever comes back, it's been 5 months now. If this comes back, can I be the first one to view it?" And full credit to them, I was the next person in. The guy who bought it went bust. He was loaning a lot of money from people. He'd overstretched himself on sites. as soon as it went bust in January, I was first in, made an offer, negotiated, and we got it under offer. So it was a brilliant deal. I didn't know how we were going to buy it at the time, so we didn't have the funds to buy it. But quite often, as I've learned through development, it's if you've got a good enough deal, you'll find the investment. And you can't just be looking for investment and not have the deal. I think you need to be doing both at the same time. But quite often, you need to have the deal first. And if it's a solid deal, we did a pre-app. I think within 2 weeks of making the offer, we had the architecture, because we do all the architecture in house. We had the pre-app done in 2 weeks, and we had a meeting on site with the council, because we've got a good relationship with them as well. They were like, look, we like what you're doing. We didn't want you to knock the building down. That was just the previous architect that just said, look, we think we need to knock the building down and rebuild it. So it all started to piece together as soon as I had that letter saying the conversion is good, and we're really transforming the building back into residential. It's a very ugly office-looking building. It was residential previously. So as soon as we had that letter of pre-app, I knew that the deal was de-risked, So I could go to the investors and say, and it's with Andy and Mike, and say, look, guys, this is good to go. We've got a letter here saying they're going to approve 24 units conversion and then 13 units new build. And that was already an uplift on the current planning of about 12 units. So we'd increased the GDV massively just by getting sort of a letter in principle to say that we could do this. So I think that the whole process from purchasing took around 5 to 6 months. I think it was quite a slow.
And you bought it outright. You didn't get an option on this one.
We didn't get an option. The guy was very specific, very old school vendor. He was just like, I just want unconditional. You're not getting this under an option. And sometimes you just have to play the game. You have to adapt to what the vendor wants. And so what we did is we had a bit of a. We had a bit of a delayed completion. We actually got the planning submitted. So whilst quite often what we do is, because we can work quite efficiently at speed, we get underway with the planning, all those documents that need to be done, we'll do it up front. So that's at risk to my business, and it's to risk, we've had schemes where it doesn't work and we've wasted 2 months' work, and I have to suck that up. But when it does work, it means that we went onto a bridge to buy it. Once we came off the bridge, I think we were probably 2 to 3 months into the bridge, we had the planning sorted, and then we had the development finance sorted, and we could start on site. So on a scheme that big, I think what's been drilled into me is you've got to be quick, you've got to be efficient. That's the developer side. It's like,
absolutely.
Time is absolutely money. So you need to take risks to, maybe you might waste a bit of time, or you might risk a little bit of time, but the benefit at the back end is huge. And I think that's really shown from how quickly we've been able to grow and develop. I think it's that efficiency with our time. I think we're much faster than other competitors.
And when you're securing it unconditionally and you're on a bridge, you need to get that planning. There's kind of like a little bit of squeaky bum type moments, I guess, where you feel, especially with the planning situation. And I get people coming to me saying, I want to take a bridge to go take something through planning, and I say I'll do it for you. It's like it's just you need to know the risks that you're taking. But because I think with your experience and how you position it with these investors, I think you obviously feel comfortable, confident enough that you've managed the worst case scenarios, or you've brought them to the forefront and said, this is what could happen. Are you okay? Let's go.
That's it. It's that experience. I wouldn't be doing this at 25 years old. Like it's because I've done 10 years or so of development. I'm at that point now where I've worked with this council a lot. They know me. They know the branding of Arcvelop. Even they've seen the stuff that we've developed as well in the local area. So I've actually got a relationship now with the council, which is invaluable as well. So I think the case officer is a guy that I've dealt with 2 or 3 times before, but that's through the experience of developing stuff in the area. So there's always a risk, and you can never eliminate all the risk.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
It's impossible, but you can do so much to de-risk that. And I think the positive pre-app, the conversation that I had face-to-face with the heritage officer, the case officer, I could look into their eyes and I could see that, there is a scheme here. There's not a chance that it's not going to become residential. It's just a matter of how many units are we going to get.
Right.
Even when we've gone to committee, it's gone well in this area. So I think it's just about de-risking stuff as much as you can.
The only thing that I would say is about with the classic chicken and egg, money or deal comes first. You've always been able to come up with the money. You've got some business partners that you work with. Are they like in terms of the split of the responsibilities? Do you focus on delivery of planning and maybe certain construction elements, and then they kind of raise the capital? Is there a division of labor there?
Yeah, I'd say Arcvelop now is becoming much more of a delivery partner. Exactly what you're saying is that we know what we're good at, and I think in business it's invaluable to know what are you good at and what are you not so good at. And it's not the point that I can't go out and raise money, but there's just not capacity for me to do all of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've learned from a young age really to basically work with people who complement your skill sets. And with Andy and Mike, for example, in Arcvelop Investor Group, we've got a great synergy where they know that from a planning, design, development, working with builders, that's my forte.
Yeah.
Arcvelop can do all of that, and we can do it well. Andy and Mike have great skills at building small businesses. They have great skills at finding investments, structuring deals. So in that sense, it works really well. And it's really exciting at the moment because I'm getting people coming to me sort of saying, look, we've got a tricky site. We can fund it, but we have no experience in developing this 30-unit scheme.
Yeah.
So actually, the doors are sort of opening. I think it's quite a unique situation for an architecture-led practice, development practice, is that you're getting people that are coming because of your branding and what you're doing, that they want to work with you, and they're quite happy to split the equity just on the basis that you'll handle everything. And I think that's the way that I run my business as well, is that it's all about collaboration, and I'd much rather that I did a deal with someone else and we were both able to earn it rather than not doing a deal at all.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And the fact that you've got partners that can help you do the things that you're really good at, and they can do those other things, I think is the reason why you're getting the level of success you are in a short space of time, is because you've basically solved all of the pieces of the puzzle with having the right people in the right places, and the right ethos as well. So, one of the things that you mentioned, actually, you were looking at a place in Spain, and you've kind of spread out in terms of the deals you do, because again, there's different philosophies, and some people are pretty adamant, especially the longer that they've been doing it, is I only invest in my backyard. A certain city is my city, and I know the planning people, I know the councillors, and I know the price per square foot, and that's why I feel comfortable doing it. And the scattergun approach is not the right approach. Whereas there's a different contingent, which is, look, I'm location is important, but it's about being able to find the right deal and find the right people to do the right deal. And I will go anywhere in the country, and then you've got people with literally a portfolio across the country. They might be based in London or whatever, and they are able to make that work. From your point of view, with the work that you do, because it's very it's architecture as well. It's like planning led. You desktop based, similar to finance. Do you find how do you make sure that you are able to do enough DD to de-risk something in terms of end values, in terms of contractors and construction and managing these projects?
Yeah, we do a lot of work on that, and if we're ever entering a new area, we do a whole area analysis study of what that area is. So in all the areas that I invest, even if we look at stuff in Brighton, or we look at stuff in Sheffield or Norwich or Kent, we're looking into how much is the commercial property value. It's a very simple metric, really. What's the pound per square foot of the commercial property I can buy, and what's the pound per square foot of the 1-bed, 2-bed, 3-bed flat that I can develop it into? And that metric, as long as I have a good standpoint on the development costs, it's a very simple figure to sort of work out. And if it doesn't work out on the spreadsheet, if it doesn't work out in terms of that deal, then we won't do it. And equally, if we don't know enough about an area and we don't know, we won't do the deal. So I think we're quite focused. In my portfolio is quite focused in one area. That is to be said that I've got the portfolio manager. I've got everything in one area for those properties. But we are starting to now look at stuff all over the country, and I don't think that scares us. I think that we will just have the system set up for those to be run, and the most important thing is making sure that simple metric of what we're buying it for, how we're going to add value, and what's it going to be worth at the end. And we don't buy anything consented that we can't improve on. We always, every single scheme, we have a strict policy that we really want to work on just conversion stuff, and that's because there might be a little bit of new build to the side, but the predominant field is conversion, because I think there's a really good, the councils are more supportive of conversions. You have an existing building there. You can't say, well, you've got an existing building there, so we're not going to, you need to knock it down. I love working with the constraints of the building, and it's there, it's standing, so you can improve a building quite easily. The council, I think, are more favourable. I think
it's not if we can do something, it's what can we do with this.
Exactly, it's a building, so
has it intrinsic value. Also, from an investor's point of view, if you're taking on investors, they feel like at least I'm getting something here, and the fallback position will be whatever it kind of currently is with a refurb.
Exactly. You have a bricks and mortar valuation, So I think from an investment point of view, it's better. I think from a planning point of view, I think it's more better. I think the government are more favourable for conversion projects as well, and they're trying to bring in all the the PD and
stuff,
everything like that. And then I think from a build cost point of view, quite a lot of people say, well, you don't know all the unknowns in existing building. Well, I think there's a lot of unknowns in building a new build site. I mean, I've done new build stuff, and getting out of the ground is it's not a cliche saying, it's real. You can spend months and months and months. Whereas you look at the 30,000 square foot office building that we're doing now, or it's 18,000 square foot conversion. In basically 3-4 months, we first fixed 3 of the floors. We're probably 2-3 months into first fixing it all. We're boarding up the top floor in 2 or 3 months. It's all stripped out. The structural work's doing. It can go and I think that the conversion will be completed by the end of the year. So it's super quick if you know what you're doing in there. So I'm as you can tell, I'm much more favoured towards. I love commercial conversions. I love conversions. I love working with existing properties. I think there's a real nice factor of reusing buildings as well, not always building new. I think there's plenty of buildings in the UK. We're blessed with lots of beautiful buildings. There's loads that need money to be spent on them.
And you're spending a lot of money on reports up front. So, like, if you've got a big building like this particular one in is it Margate in Kent?
It's down Ramsgate,
Ramsgate, right? So the structural engineer you might get in to make sure that there's no serious structural issues with it, so that you can just crack on with all the kind of cosmetic-y stuff. And then you might get, different reports basically that will make sure that you're cracking on in the right way.
We basically have a set of consultants that we've now built up that are our go-to consultants. We've got the same structural engineer does all of our stuff. He's very knowledgeable, ex-building control. We've got a contract administrator who's also our QS. He's very experienced and he runs all of our jobs as well. But all these people, when we go into a building, I will find out within a few phone calls, because of the relationships, I'll find out whether we think it's a goer or not. And it's also down to me as well. I think a lot of the risk comes down to me. I think my investors and, or my business partners, I think if it actually did go wrong, unfortunately, nothing has gone wrong at the moment.
Touch wood, yeah. But I forgot what I was going to say. I was like, there was structural engineer, and then there's the valuers as well. So, like, if you take on a lender, for example, and that you're doing a development finance, they're always going to want to get a valuer in. So they'll kind of gauge what your end value should be, whether you're on point or whether you're over-egging your figures. Because that's what I see more fairly often, is that either developers are too optimistic about their GDVs. Of course, if you're really optimistic in GDV, you pretty much make any deal stack. Or you're too optimistic on your build costs, where you think, actually, it's not going to cost me as much. In terms of your build cost, do you normally just put in 10% contingency? Do you try and put a little bit more? How much do you stress test the deals in your spreadsheet?
Yeah, quite heavily. We have the build cost is down to me and the QS that we've worked together a long time.
Again, you got QS for build costs. So you've got all these people giving you the consult.
Yeah. We have a 10% contingency which we spend on every single deal, which is completely fine. That's why it's there. But we don't go over that. I mean, in all the developments we've done, I'm very proud to say that we've finished within 1 to 2 months of the time frame that we said that we were going to finish on, so the investors know. And we've never gone over the 10% contingency, which is I think that's
Impressive.
quite an impressive stat
Yeah.
for a developer who's quite active, and that is through quite careful management. I mean, there's no lying here. Is that there's a lot of time that goes into managing builders. I think planning and builders, and building, developing stuff, and we like to retain stuff. So you have to build things well. You have to build it at a good price. It has to work. But the management involved in that it cannot be underestimated, especially when you're quite a young business starting up. You can't have a project manager doing all of this. You can't have a QS to start with. So the person that does it is you, So if anything went wrong on any of our developments, if it looked like we weren't going to meet our valuation date, I was down there 7 days a week. There was one time on a project, I think I spent 8 weeks every day down there, and I was basically meeting the builders every morning. Right, what are you guys doing today? What are you guys doing? How can we speed up this? And that, I think that sort of level of dedication is really also why the investors keep coming back to invest, because I make sure that their money is coming back on time when we said, and that the build cost doesn't go over. And
It's
not for
super
the faint of
important.
heart.
Yeah, exactly. Not for the faint of heart. And why is it that you do the construction as well? Because I know a few architects. I think they're great as well, and they just focus on planning uplift, and then they'll flip it over to somebody else. Is there a particular reason why you also choose to do the construction? Because
Yeah.
you flipped the other one in Orpington, for example. So how do you decide whether you're going to flip it or keep it and construct it?
Actually, with me and my business partner David, I was the one that wanted to build it.
Okay.
So the guy who bought it is actually a builder investor himself, and he's got a valuation on that site of 3.3 million to build it out. So I think I could have built that for about 750,000, and bear in mind I had an option agreed at 750. So if I could build it out for that with your finance costs, I think there was a hell of a lot of profit.
So you're
in
leaving
that one.
money on the table, basically.
Yeah. But look, we sold it for 1.1, and it's not that often with our deal. Like, it's quite hard to find buyers to buy ready-made develop. You've got to find the builder. You've got to find.
Yeah.
So if there's an opportunity when you're building out a lot of schemes, if you're able to sell one of them, which is to generate a profit of 350,000, I think you've got to take that as well. You can't be greedy with these things, and I think it helps cash flow. And I mean, the one thing about development is, the cash flow is not great. So to be able to turn a few deals, but I actually wanted to build that one out, and I think I could have made a hell of a lot of money off it. However, in the grand scheme of things, I think it's good to be, have a bit of adaptability and be quite varied. We're building a lot of stuff out, and that cash flow from that deal is going to help us to progress and do more.
Yeah, fair play. That makes sense. That said, in terms of your favorite part of the whole process, is it the planning and wrestling with councillors, or is it the contractors and wrestling with weather conditions?
Yeah, that is a tough question. I think neither of them. No, I think basically I think the moment when you see your design come into shape in a building, and then for some reason when I step on the scaffold and the roof's formed and the building's there and you can see the outline structure, it's not finished at all.
Yeah.
The spaces start to be formed. I don't know what that buzz that I don't get from anything else.
Right.
Yeah. It's that sense of feeling of like, I've created this and I've taken it from concept to, and it just goes back to, why I sort of fell in love with architecture, really.
Call that a proper developer.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Very good. But going back to planning, which I think I talk about the affordable housing crisis constantly. Literally, as we record this, we are on the verge of another general election and different political parties and how they might be able to help us build more houses and bring more affordable housing to the masses. 10, 15 years ago, it was the credit crunch. We didn't have access to capital. I feel that that's changed somewhat. But the planning system seems to be the biggest drawback, or it seems to be the common denominator from a lot of people I speak to. You're obviously wrestling with this day in, day out. What's your opinion on it? Does it get you down? Does it hold you back? And if so, is there any ways that in your mind we can improve it?
There's plenty of ways that we can improve it. Absolutely. It's quite an archaic system, it really is. But I'm the sort of person that I try and make everything work the best way that I can. And unfortunately, I don't feel that I'm going to be able to change the planning system myself. I think it's something that is going to change and it's going to adapt over time. I always look at things as how can I make it work for my business in the best way. And I think the way that the relationships that we've built with councils, and I think this goes back to the whole London development model versus developing outside of London. Um, we operate in councils. We try to operate in councils where we can get on the phone with people. We're working with, if we can buy a plot that we know is a good value, a good building, we can buy in an area where we know that we've got a good relationship with the council where we can get them on the phone. For me, I've just de-risked the deal tenfold, rather than if I buy a bank in central London, I can't get the guy on the phone. It keeps on getting knocked back through planning. We're going from pre-app to pre-app. That to me is quite a big risk to my business, especially when I'm when the business is quite young. I don't need that sort of stuff. I think as the business continues to grow, I'm hoping I'm doing this for 20, 30 years, I'm going to start moving back into the London areas, and when I'm really quite established, I think it'll be a natural progression. The other thing is that London hasn't been great for flat prices. I think there's been a stat revealed that since 2016 or 2017, they've basically risen a few percent. That's not the same as outside of London. So for what I do, I'm quite switched on with looking at areas of where can I get the most out of, where are they pro-investment, where do they need property developers to go in there, and where are they really wanting these vacant buildings to be reused. So I think that's super important to my business model. I do agree that, look, the planning system doesn't work in some areas, and I have to tell all my clients, look, we're good at the planning system, we're good at, we've got good relationships in these areas, but we cannot guarantee anything whatsoever. But I think where I develop, we try to develop in areas, and it doesn't work all the time. In Norwich, we had 7 months in discharging planning conditions, and basically it was because the council just wasn't receptive to responding to us, or and really it just took a hell of a lot of time. It's not always the case, but so that is an active decision, and I think you can only really control what you're doing, and for me it's about efficiency, speed, doing more, and if it makes more sense to do it in an area because I've got a good relationship with the council and I know that they're quite quick and receptive.
Why are those areas? Is it just because they're less busy, or is it they've got more funding to pay more people in that department?
I think they're more old-fashioned. I think the areas I think London has become quite an area where you can get certain districts. It's not true all across London, but you can get certain areas where they don't even have phone numbers where you can call the council. I mean, that is absurd. You can't actually speak to anyone on the end of the phone. Whereas in some places, especially in Kent, where we're finding, we can build up that relationship with certain case officers, and you get the same case officer in certain areas. So you can basically build that relationship. You have his number to call him up, and for me, that is such a big factor, and it helps. It helps me sleep at night. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can just tell as well the enthusiasm that comes through you. You kind of actually do enjoy it as well. You say pretty much everything with a smile, which is good to see. What might not give you such a smile is possibly the cost of each application. How much are we talking about? Because labour and property is typically considered to be a very cash-intensive game, a game played by wealthy people, and there are certain barriers to entry, and one of them is the amount of money that you need. And when I was looking at doing more stuff that was very, very heavily planning orientated, I was a little bit taken back by the kind of tell me, how much are these planning costs for a 40-unit scheme, or for the one in Orpington? Kind of how much do you allocate for each of these schemes?
The real cost, I can tell you pretty accurately. I think for the 40-unit scheme, you're probably in the region of about 40,000, somewhere around that, 50,000 for the scheme in Orpington, just for 9 units, including the option agreement that we had to pay fees for the option agreement.
Right.
We probably paid about 20, I think, for that, and that was option agreement fees and the planning costs. But the one thing I would say is that if I was, giving any sort of advice, if I really focused on building a track record and learning my craft, and it does help. Obviously, I'm an architect, and I think having a skill, it doesn't have to be in architecture, it can be in engineering, it can be project management, it could be in financing, you know. But having a skill and leveraging those skills was the most important thing that I ever did in my business, because, go back sort of 5 years, I wasn't confident about, going to investors and asking for money and loaning money. But I think actually, as I've got older and really grown into it, I think people value skills quite highly, and I would recommend anyone to leverage your skills as much as possible, because when you're starting out, you don't have those sorts of sums of money. You just don't. But other people do, and you have a skill set, and so don't be scared about saying, well, look, you put the funds in, I'll do the work.
Yeah, if you got back yourself, I'm confident I can do this. And you've got a bit of track record. Like you said, you cut your teeth in other places. And that's what gives you that confidence to be able to spend that money. Because for somebody else that hasn't done it, to go out and do £40,000 on a planning play, and maybe you want to spread your risk, so you do 2, 3, 4, and then they all go wrong. You've lost a couple of $100,000, and you're out the game pretty quickly. So you got to really know what you're doing. Probably start small, think big. I'm always a big believer of that.
Absolutely, yeah. I wouldn't be doing this if I hadn't got the experience of doing it before. It's just no way.
So you've had a few successes. Has any of your deals gone wrong? Have you ever had anything go wrong, and what did that look like?
I think,
or not go to plan at the very least, depending on
yeah. We've never had a deal go wrong. As in, we've never significantly lost money on a deal. We've never, and I think I put that down to the fact that those key principles are that we add value to everything. We don't buy anything with consent. We do a lot of due diligence, and I spend a lot of time on the deals. So if anything was starting to go out of kilter, I'd be on it straight away. I mean, obviously within the deals, we've had plenty of things go wrong. I think on every single deal, there are things on site that just happen, and you have no control over them. We've had, because we do everything main contractor, we rely on a lot of the skills on the contractor. And I want one person to deal with, I just have the main guys, but he has many internal problems that go wrong. But the way we set it up is that I can't manage 5 or 6 sites, managing what the tiler's doing, what the scaffolder's doing, all of that. But I can manage 5 people who manage all those people. So we've had plenty of things on every single deal that goes wrong, and I think you just have to. The real test is how you deal with those things, and to be honest, I think it's the one thing that I'm quite good at is decision making and problem solving. And I think builders they want to work with us, and they want to work with me in particular, is because they want solutions quickly. They don't want people that don't quite know what the decision. You have to be quite fast. You have to act quite quickly. These things cost money for them. It costs money for you, and you need to be able to know who to speak to, how to solve it. So I think we are. It goes back to this efficiency point. I think we are very efficient. I think builders are receptive to that. But yeah, we've had scaffoldings that have had to be taken down, go back up again. We've had HSE that have come out and asked certain things, and we've had enforcement teams that have sort of questioned how high the buildings are, and wow. There's loads of things. It goes on and on and on and on.
You get nervous when these things happen, but you just got to kind of have faith and confidence in what you're doing.
There's always a solution. There's always a solution. There might be a monetary issue. There might, that's why you have to have these contingencies there. You may have to manage this first, get all hands on deck and just deal with it. And quite often, if you're not getting the result, it's usually me that I get on the phone and I have to deal with it, and I have to go down there and speak to the people. And there's always a solution. If you have good intentions, and if you're trying to develop stuff like we always do, we always want to improve the buildings, we always want to pay our investors back on time, we always want to help the council out and give them something that they'll be proud of, something that the community is going to make the community better. I think if you're doing that, people can see that through your branding and the style of buildings. So yeah, that's how I try to deal with it anyway.
I mean, some of the designs and the interiors and stuff. I mean, you've been on TV and stuff. You've had some really great exposure. Yeah. It's really. I encourage anybody to go out and check out your Instagram and stuff. And some of the stuff that you've been doing. And you're nominated for more and more awards as well. So I can only see a very, very bright future ahead of you, way beyond what you've already been doing, which is impressive enough. What's the best piece of advice that you've received to date?
Oh, that's a tough one. The best piece of advice, honestly, it's a bit of but honestly, it was from my mum trying to get me to go to university. She was the one that convinced me to go to an architecture school. I wasn't going to apply, and she sort of said, just go for it. You'll never know what will happen. So she's always instilled that, just that self-belief that just go for it. What's the worst that can happen, So I think that was quite life-changing, that advice, yeah.
Very good. And what was the worst piece of advice that you've ever had?
I've had a few bits of bad advice, but I would probably say one of my old directors that I worked for in development, he used to say, "You're just an architect," and he used to say, I went with him the idea of combining. I want to do high-end architecture and commercially via development. I've got this, and he said, no, you need to choose whether you're an architect or a developer. You can't be both. That was quite bad advice. So yeah, I'd say those two bits.
Fair enough. And you're obviously a successful property person. This show is called Property People. For those that want to strive for the similar successes that you've had and be successful in property, what sort of characteristic traits is it important for them to have to be successful?
Yeah, I think your work ethic is critical. I think your ability to learn quickly and deal with problems. The large reason why I've had some success is because of learning my craft and really cutting my teeth on those projects. I don't think I would have been able to do what I'm doing now without doing that. And I think that was, just don't try to run too quickly. Give yourself a run up with these things. Don't rush things. And also, I've had a lot of, I think when you're starting to scale up and do bigger projects, I think don't be afraid to work with good people. Be very careful who you work with. Don't jump into bed with anyone. But once you find someone you've got that good, you trust them and you've got that gut feeling with them, working with other people can help you manage the risk, and it can also manage your stress levels a bit as well. It means you can do more. And I think that's a key attribute that people try to do too much stuff by themselves.
Yeah.
And I think if you can work with good people, the trajectory can be much greater. So.
Great advice. Totally agree with you. And if people wanted to reach out with you, do you still do mentoring? I know you did a bit of that. Or if they want to invest with you, what's the best way people could find you and reach out to you and connect?
Yeah, sure. Obviously all our details are Arcvelop. You'll see us on social media: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can drop us a DM if you send an email to info@arcvelop.com. And I do some mentoring. I don't do a great deal, but I've got a group of just under 10, and it's all to do with sort of development consultancy, helping other people also make transitions from. I've got young architects coming into development. I've got people that are experienced sort of HMO developers, and they want to learn how to manage multiple sites of doing proper sort of commercial developments, de-risking them. Just drop me a message.
Grand. Thank you so much, Mark. It's been really, really impressive. And I'd like for you to come back. I really would, so we can talk about this 40-unit scheme. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be some other impressive stuff going on in the future, and I'd love to follow your journey and share that with the audience.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Cheers, Sam.
Have a great day.
Cheers.